community activists and legends from 1950 to 1990. My name is Brenda Jones. I'm a native Washingtonian, the mother of 2 sons and 2 granddaughters.
My name is Sandy Allen. My background is Ward 8. That's the beginning. I've lived in the Ward 8 community since 1943.
My name is Calvin Bernard Woodland Jr. I'm the son of Calvin Woodland Sr.
And my name is Addie Cook. I've been a resident of Ward 8 since 1952.
Anthony Motley, Anthony Jerome Motley. I'm a Ward 8 resident. I've lived here for most of my life. Was in the military, and I was away at school for a while.
I'm Jacqueline Renee Day, and I'm a resident of Ward 8, where I've always loved Southeast. And I've just always thought Southeast was so beautiful and a good place to live.
My name is Absolom Jordan, and everybody calls me A. I'm a native Washingtonian, 73 years old.
We're preparing for recognition of Ward 8 residents who have been the sheroes and the heroes that kept this ward together for many years, starting from 1950 to 1990. It's an opportunity to recognize and say thank you to those who have worked hard and sacrificed to keep our community stabilized as possible during those periods. So this is why we're doing this project.
Why is it important to acknowledge people that haven't been recognized?
Because they have made such an impression on enhancing the quality of life of all of us because of their efforts. As Community Center, I founded the organization January 12, 1980, in the basement of an apartment building here in Parklands. I was living in Parklands, in fact lived here from 54 to 57 as a child, and moved back here in 72 with my own family. And living here, I noticed how the young people really had not a lot of recreational activities and programs to engage themselves. And so I asked the owner, Conrad Caperts at the time, if I could open up a community center so we could serve young people year-round and adults, because we also had workforce development programs. We had computer training, well, back in those days, data processing training programs and computer training programs. So we have had just an array of services, from helping homeless families, ex-offenders, year-round programs for children and youth, field trips, cultural art activities. We tried to be everything that we could be that will provide as much as we could to young people and families in the community to, again, enhance their quality of life.
I also saw the fact that the Parkland Community Center was open and having family-oriented classes, and that was something that we needed, especially during the time of the crack epidemic in our community.
So, because God had given me this will, that I need to use it. So, Parklands Community Center doors opened.
Activist is just another word to me for missionary. I'm a faith-based person also. There are people that will go out and just get in and do what needs to be done to lend a hand wherever a hand and a heart is needed. But it has to be in your heart. It's not something that you can just get out and do.
Well, see, I think first of all, that you have to have a political or ideological position that you act from. I'm a black nationalist. And so as a black nationalist, I believe that wherever black people are, they ought to determine their own destiny. And so my position is that as an activist, I'm going to promote my ideology. What it means is that I love black people and that I'm working for their advancement. And so being an activist means that I have an ideology that drives me, guides me in terms of what I'm trying to do.
You know, a lot of them have given up on their own personal dreams to help this generation. A lot of them could have been wealthy, but they chose to just be comfortable and to do what they can to help somebody else.
So a community activist is someone that, first of all, does their homework, is not emotionally charged, but is motivated by research and analysis, and then the designs and approach necessary to correct whatever the problem might be.
I came to D.C. to visit with my aunt that had just moved in a neighborhood called Fort Stanton in 1952, and I went to my teacher's college and stayed there with her until I got married and moved out to Maryland in the 80s. Everybody's house was a mile apart and I didn't like it. I came straight back to Ward 8 and I've been back here ever since, and I ain't gonna leave until I go feet first. I love Ward 8. I've been working very hard in Ward 8 all these years, especially in Fort Stanton. And I'm looking out the window of this beautiful building, the Ark. Who would have thought we would ever have such a magnificent site as this in Ward 8? When I first came here, this was all woods. Sandy Allen used to have Easter egg hunts over here when she was the council member. I've been working with the Department of Parks and Recs ever since I can remember, because when I walked across the street, well, when I came and saw that little round building that they called a recreation center, I said then, which was about 15 years ago, we need a recreation center. Children need to have somewhere to play. And I believe that was my goal as given to me by God, because it took me 10 years. In 2004, they closed the little recreation center down and put a note on the door and said, go to Barry Farms. I said, this will never do. So I got on the phone and called up to 16th Street. That's where the office was for DPR. And they told me that they didn't know it was closed. So then I told them, come out and take a look. And I went over and met with them. And they said, well, it's going to be closed. You don't need it. It needs to have a lot of work done, and we don't have the money, so you can go to Barry Farms. And I told the young man, I don't remember his name, but I told him straight up, we ain't going to Barry Farms. We're going to get a new recreation center. They had the people come out and start digging and cutting grass and doing a whole lot of stuff, and they refurbished that little room. But we didn't get a new rec center. We got that little one fixed, but that was more than we had. So I got busy, real busy then, trying to go to all the council members and everybody that I knew in the DC government. Always been working with Marion Barry. And we worked with him, and then when Wilhelmina Rollout was our council member, I worked with her, and down Edie Whittington and down through Sandy Allen. Everybody knew I wanted a recreation center at Fort Stanton. So when Mr. Fenty became the mayor, I got on his case. And he told me one time, Addie Cook, every time I see you, I see Fort Stanton written across your head. I said, and you will see it until we get a rec center. Long story short, we had dedication for a new recreation center in July of 2013 with Mr. Vincent Gray in office. And we're having a wonderful time there. We have a beautiful seasoned seniors program, and I'm still doing my work with the Office on Aging, the Congress Heights Wellness Center, the Union Temple Baptist Church, where I'm trustee emeritus. I'm still on the usher board, and I'm just having a wonderful time. I will never stop working for Ward 8. I just love Ward 8.
After I got out of the service, I went to work for IBM, and some things happened while I was in IBM, and I joined the Black United Front because IBM just wasn't working for me. While I was at IBM, I did participate in some protests and what have you down in front of the White House, but I became more involved when I went to Fairhope City College. Some of the things that I've been involved in, I was a delegate to the National Black Political Assembly in 1972. I was a delegate to the Constitutional Convention here in Washington, D.C. In 1982, we helped to draw up the Constitution for the state of New Columbia. I used to be with an organization called the Far Southeast Community Organization. And we worked for years trying to deal with the housing problems out there. And that was a great effort. We had a lot of staff members, by the way. Most of them lived here in Ward 8. But we had a lot of staff members who made some real inroads in terms of helping people with the problems of paying their rent or with home ownership too. I used to be the national chairman of a group called Black Efforts for Soul and Television, and we were the first black group in the nation to challenge a TV station's license. We also were instrumental in getting the first black Federal Communications Commission commissioner. His name was Benjamin Hooks. We were instrumental in getting him appointed to the Federal Communications Commission. At that time, I ran a program with the Mayor's Youth Opportunity Service, which I ultimately brought to Ward 8. It was called the Ghetto Citizens Communication Center. The Ghetto Citizens Communication Center was designed to teach our young people about electronics, first of all, but about the broadcast industry. And we had the capability of producing videotapes, but we also taught them, some basic electronics. And they produced their own kind of projects, electronic projects. We had kits from a company called Heath Kit, and they made those there. Our young kids, our youth, need to understand that there are pathways to getting into the industry. We were able to get them into the studios and to see how operations were there, but that gave them some kind of aspirations for wanting to become in the media. We exposed them to things that they'd never been exposed to before. And I think it was very important. If you don't have the black presence in the media, then our stories are not going to be told. And then the other thing is, when you do present articles or videos or what have you, it's slanted, it's tilted in a way that kind of dismisses the importance to the black community of what the subject is being discussed. It dismisses or it fails to take into consideration the priorities of our community, our culture. So there are many aspects of a story that might be produced at a TV station that are just missing. I just think that's why we're trying to get young people to understand that they need to be in the media, because the media shapes a lot of opinions that are prevalent in our community today. Let's be honest about it. I mean, those of us who are activists know that when the media, it's a resource that you can use. Even if it's only a minor or a small amount of coverage, it still reaches people that you're not able to reach, and so it can be a resource that we use to get our message across, and it helps us in terms of organizing. So, yes, the media is quite important.
I'm honored and blessed to be here today to give a little history and background on who he was and about his activism. He was a lot of things to a lot of people, but I think the short answer to what he did was he did whatever was necessary at the time. Every holiday, he would rent vans, and we would go to the neighborhood stores, the Safeway and the Giant, and he would demand that they give back to the community, and they would in turn give us whole turkeys and vegetables, and we would go around to different houses and pass out turkeys on Thanksgiving to the families. And on Christmas, he would do something very similar, where we would have huge Christmas parties for the kids who didn't have anything. He was a good football player, and he started a football team. It was one of the best teams in the city, and everybody wanted to be a Woodland Raider. Back then, we were one of the very few teams that had all the same color uniforms. Back then teams would have all kinds of different mix-match, put together kind of stuff. I mean, people were struggling, So he was always, again, this bright, shiny light. One of the most significant things that he contributed to Ward 8 was leadership. I think he was, my father became an activist before I heard the word. The kids would come outside, and you would go up on the top of the hill and the street would be lined with cars with people riding through to buy drugs.
Before the crack epidemic, this was a thriving community, especially here in Parkland. Most of the people here were professionals living in this community. After the crack epidemic really got a hold to our community, we lost some of our stores. We lost our restaurant. It was Slade's restaurant. We lost that because people did not want to come into this community thinking that it was dangerous. When the crack epidemic started, the professionals started moving out because of the crime and the violence that was going on in the neighborhood.
My father started going up there telling them they couldn't sell drugs in the neighborhood. And he would literally, single-handedly disband the entire order of things. He would shut it down. And eventually, other neighbors started to join in with him, and it would be us against the drug dealers. While he was doing that up in that particular neighborhood, there were others, as this film will show, who was doing the same thing in other parts.
My grandfather caught pneumonia and died building a building which is now standing at Stanton Road and Pomeroy Road, and it's owned by the church now. But we were with an organization called the Junior Police and Citizens Corps. He wanted to build a building so that the young people in the neighborhood would have some place to go for recreation. After his death, my grandmother went into the building and she taught young ladies how to sew, how to crochet, to make sure that young people had something to do.
The Orange Hat Group, when they boldly stood down the drug dealers, people coming into our community with not good intentions, and they're making life very much more livable for people in those communities because they were there to protect basically us when the police could not do it.
I grew up right here in this neighborhood. Matter of fact, played ball on this lot. It was an empty lot at one point before this building became what it is. Learned how to drive on Mississippi Avenue at 13 years old. I was the president of the Coalition for the Homeless for 2 years, and during that 2-year span, helped to open up a 600-bed men's facility east of the river when people said it couldn't be done. Put 7 transitional houses across the city for homeless people, one of them for homeless veterans. And this was all done back in the 80s when people said, oh yeah, it's not gonna get done. I've helped to open up hospices. I've helped to open up homes for children who have HIV and AIDS, mothers. The government is not the social service provider, it shouldn't be. But the government should be there to support social service providers. But a lot of times you find the government gets into the business of providing social services. I see the government as being the entity that provides the resources to support the services. And that the services are done by the community, by the people in the community. Because the people in the community are closer to the problem than the government is. With the social service providers today, they rely a lot on technology and government assistance. I think back in the day, social service providers relied more on intuition and being able to connect people to resources, and it was more networking. You pick up the phone and you call so-and-so and so-and-so is coming over, that kind of thing. But today now everybody's got to go through the system. Everybody's got to be databased. Everybody has to be, has to wait for the green light. And so while we're waiting, people are dying. While people are going through the system, some people are getting lost in the system. I grew up in a situation where we were exposed to community activism. We were exposed to community activism by a gentleman by the name of Bobby Legen. People know that name. Who introduced us to Dewey Hughes and Petey Green when we were kids. We had radio stations, WST, WOK, WOL. These radio stations, they spoke to the issues of what's happening in our community. You got your news from them. You got your direction from listening to the radio stations. The announcers were more socially conscious. The music back in the day was more socially conscious. So you got the message. You know, it was all about community. It was all about nation building, so to speak. It was about black pride. It was about, you know, lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. You didn't have the, you know, the backstabbing and the things that people do out here today. You didn't have everybody trying to get that dollar. You know, everybody does, you know, somebody dangles a grant and everybody's trying to fight for the grant. You didn't have that back in the day. When you look at the media today, we become more sophisticated, but we become more distant. And we become less hands-on, and we become more commentary.
I've helped with a lot of different programs in the Southeast area. Before and after care programs, summer programs. And I've just had a ball doing it. The children were just absolutely wonderful, but to me, all children are wonderful. I think if God had anything better, He didn't tell me because I would have wanted it. I had the young ladies and the young gentlemen in what I called a basic life skill class. In that class, I taught resumes, proper way to table etiquette, the proper way to behave in public when riding the buses, because at that time, sometimes you would see the young people on the bus and they were not, some of them were not always as polite as I felt they should have been. So I began to teach these classes and the children were just absolutely wonderful. And we did role playing. They had to role play and they had to critique each other. From all of the groups that I've been involved with, the Southeast Marching Hornets, they started out as students from the Henley Elementary School because school was closed. And some of them were in the school marching facility, which only marched once a year at the Safety Patrol Parade. So they wanted to do something, you know, they just wanted to stay active and there's nothing to do. And like I said, I had 7 boys, so they were always at my house, the guys were. And I had this one little girl, and the girls would come to the house with her. And they said, can we cheerlead? Can we march? Can we do something? So myself and Miss Carolyn Carey, she said, well, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get instruments from? So I said, well, I'm waiting for my income tax check. My income tax check came, and hers came about a week or so after mine. And she said, this is not enough money. I said, no, it's not enough money, because I started checking where we could buy drums, and drums were very expensive. So I said, I'll tell you what, let's sell sandwiches, dinners. We both like to cook. Let's get stuff going. And that's what we did. We combined our income tax returns, and we sold sandwiches to construction sites. We even ended up selling them to the teachers at PR Harris and Henley Elementary School, and they knew what I was trying to do, and everybody was very helpful. At that time, it was Mayor Berry, and he told me about writing a grant, which I didn't know anything about, and I did. I wrote the grant, and it was approved, and we got that grant from the Escheated Estates funding. And I went out and bought sewing machines and more material. I bought hats with red plumes. I just think I went crazy. Kids had boots. They just had everything, and we became one large family. I think it not only impacted the children's lives, but it did a lot for the elderly in the neighborhood. There were 2 African American ladies and 1 European American lady. And it was so wonderful. I knew the resident managers up in Linda, Poland, and they gave me an apartment. And these ladies were all getting checks, and those 3 ladies, I put them in that apartment. Those children went home to their parents and everybody else, and they collected everything that those ladies needed. Furniture, pots and pans. They would go to the store for them, walk them to the store to make sure that, you know, nobody bothered them. They called them other grandma and auntie. They were just, I can't say enough about those children. They were just the best children. A lot of other people that had a heart for children, a lot of them have passed on. And somewhere, somehow, things just seem to come a little bit unglued. And it's kind of hard now to get a group of children together to want to do things. They're just different. And if people would just lose their fear of thinking, well, I can't do it because I have to do this, or these children are changed, you know. I volunteer now at Henley Elementary School every day of the week, and I hear some of the people say, well, the children are so rude, they won't listen. Okay. I don't think that's it. Sometimes that's it, but it's only because they don't know another way. I think if we had more people that were willing to volunteer and just spend maybe just an hour with a small group of children, 1 or 2, just be a surrogate grandmother or a surrogate auntie or a surrogate uncle or a surrogate grandpa. Just, you know, the schools are full of children. Their parents are working. Some of these parents are working. And times are hard. And because they have to go to work when they come home, you know, they have a lot of things to do. If there was just somebody just to fill in the gap and spend just a little time with those children, I think it would make a very, very, very big difference.
There is still a lot of issues and problems here, but it could have been worse. And we want to thank those who have stood up and fought and served as alternatives to a lot of the negative activities that were coming here.
I mean, the issues back then was more overt with race and everything else. You know, it was an all-white police force, and they didn't have any problems at all with, they were riding horses back then. They had no problem with getting off their horses and disrupting the community, most times for no reason at all. And, you know, he would stand up for the community, oftentimes getting beat himself. I mean, we would have to go to the police station and you know, 2 days later, go pick him up and get him out of jail. And this happened time and time again.
I can remember not being allowed to come into the Sheridan Park Hotel through the front door because of segregation. We had to go through the kitchen in order to perform on the TV station. I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, but I remember the incidents of segregation in the district and within Ward 8. This was like a little country town on this side. There were people who, on my block, we had a teacher, music teacher, taxi cab drivers, live-in maids. Everybody lived together and helped each other.
Back then, I think race was the major issue. Race stuck out, number one. I think now it's classism. You know, I think we got people of the same race who look down on poor people.
Let's be honest, we have class distinctions within the black community. And so the capitalist system has found a way of placating some of our people. And they have then acted as folks who have kind of been gatekeepers and said, you know, everything's okay. I've made it, you can make it.
I think classism is worse than racism in a sense that, again, you know, you'll have every, it's not a color thing, it's a money thing. And if it's color, it's green, you know? And so it's the have and the have-nots, you know? And people are totally comfortable with having everything and looking across the street at somebody who has nothing.
See, one of the dangers of where we are today is that many blacks in our community believe that there's an individual solution to a group problem. And so what they say is, I made it, and if I've done it, everybody else can. Well, but you're not being discriminated against because you're an individual. You're not being oppressed and exploited because you're an individual. You're being expressed and exploited because you're a black person.
And when people have that kind of attitude, to me, it's almost inhuman, you know, and it's very unkind. And we see the devastation. We see it. We see how, you know, eventually it leads to all kinds of other crimes. I mean, you know, you can't have me across the street not being able to eat and feed my family, and I look across the street and you throwing away food. You know, it causes burglaries, robberies, and all kinds of stuff. People gonna find a way to survive. You know, and we shouldn't have that kind of clash. You know, where people have to find a way to survive. We should provide, and that's really not happening now.
And so, white folks have convinced us that a few blacks who could move progress ahead were an indication that every black person could move and make progress, and that's just not true.
Without the activism, I think we are doomed, you know, and I think activists are fearless. You know, some of these activists we have today are fearless. Some of them put their life on the line, you know, in order to try to help save this next generation.
What do we want to say to young people today? What we want to say is you need to kind of, in some sense, become aware. I think that in some respects, the conditions that are being imposed on us today are going to force us to take action and bring us back out to a point where we don't have any alternative but to fight.
We can see the devastation in their future. We know what it's going to turn out to be. So those of us who are fortunate enough, you know, to have an idea, you know, we need to share that. We need to get involved. We need to literally, you know, participate, because we're the only hope that this next generation has. If we don't do it, who's gonna do it?
Regardless to where you are in life, somebody helped you. You didn't do it by yourself. And it took the commitment from others as well as yourself to achieve great things, or to achieve the things that will make this a comfortable, healthy neighborhood.
Without people who we can look up to, without God-fearing people leading us, you know, then I think, you know, most people, as we see, will turn to their own devices.
We look at Hispanics help other Hispanic people. We've got to move beyond this self-hate scenario that we find ourselves in, you know, and this idea that I've made it and other people can too. But we don't throw back the rope to help pull them up. You know, as people say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. No, we don't do that. So we've got to develop a level of consciousness, but that's going to come from the people at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak. And remember now, those people who think they've made it, you, as a black person, you can't ever get any higher than the lowest man on the totem pole.
You can't let heartache, heartbreak, discouragement, or any of that stuff gets you down. Because if it gets you down and you stop, that causes a break. You stop for a day, then one day ends up to be 2 days, maybe 3 days.
There was a time when we were willing to fight for those things that we believed in. And see, one of the people that I look to in terms of motivation, inspiration is Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass said that society is so constituted it cannot honor a helpless man, though it may pity him. And even this it cannot do if signs of power do not arise.
Well, the only way that you're going to get change is from people. If people don't speak up, nobody's just going to walk up and give you what you want, because they won't know. You have to communicate. Communication is the greatest thing that you could ever have that most people don't use. You've got to communicate one to the other and find out what it is that same thing that you want somebody else wants, but they just they haven't said it. So it's got to communicate, and you got to communicate, and you got to be truthful. You can't communicate and say one thing one time and say something else. And I'm saying that in particular, they tell you one thing one time and tell you something the next time. And if you didn't write it down or have a tape recorder, they'll even say they didn't say it. So yeah, communication is great. And you gotta be truthful and you gotta stick to your guns. If you say you want it, stick to it and go get it.
Yeah, now it's more talk than it is activism. People like to talk, you know. They want to talk. But when it comes time to actually putting it in motion, very few people are willing to do that.
When you're in a powerful position, you make demands, you don't make requests. And so I think there was a period of time when we had the power, we at least felt we had the power to make demands. We've fallen into a period where now we are making requests. And I think that because of the conditions that exist today, we have seen a resurgence, so to speak, in terms of racism. And even though we have a black president and what have you, we are seeing racism more prevalent than it's been in the past. That's something that's a reality. And I think that what we have to do is go out to reach out to those brothers and sisters and say that the skills, the knowledge that you have should be used to help advance your people.
Everybody that's born into this world was given a gift that they could use to help someone else with.
But I believe that's true. That inside all of these brothers and sisters who are doing things today that are not in their own best interest, that we need to reach them somehow.
If life throws a curveball and tries to break out all your windows, hey, go to CVS and get some plastic bags and put some plastic bags around your window with some duct tape and keep it moving. Don't stop. Just keep right on going. And I'll bet you some way, somehow, before you know it, the windows will get replaced.
So to the young people, definitely, have a goal, have a plan, and stick to it. And don't let anybody tell you can't do it. And then you got to be careful of the people that you allow in your space. Because if they come in your space and they don't have a goal or a plan, then they're not part of your goal and plan. And so, you just have to be mindful of those things.
Sit down and think about what your gift is. You have it. You just need to know what it is, and you just need to work it.
A lot of people boldly fought back the drug dealers, advocated for affordable housing, jobs, a new community, and many have not been recognized. And so we here at the Parklands Community Center wanted to take the time to do that. We appreciate their efforts and hope that it will be encouraging for others, for the new people that are moving into the city, and for the young people who don't know, the young people that live here in the community who don't know what has gone on in the past. Ward 8 community activists and legends from 1950 to 1990.